8 by 7.
Oh, yeah, for sure, then it's a block, huh?
It's called my
Spread it out.
big boy pants.
Looks like you might be the only public we have.
Jody may be attending virtually.
Jody?
Walking ball is static.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Called me today.
Oh, she did? Oh, how'd the kneecap feel?
She was trying to figure out if it was best for her to attend in person or virtual.
Ryan, you remember when that burnt?
Jody.
Oh, that's right, you're not that old. Not yet.
Jody Fruit.
1874, I think.
She said she didn't feel like the back part.
The Bella fought through down to the
I
first.
don't know how good operate without her.
I don't know. We're
No,
gonna figure it out.
we're not front, it's from the whole person. Oh, it is? Yeah. That was up on the top of our hose tower. Before they had any type of electrical stuff, fire, they tripped a lever and they'd crank this thing all up. And then the bell would ring, ding, 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 ding. It's a big weight pulled down. That was the sign that you had a fire. That brought it front. And then got back, we had
I guess
all
this
the way
is
up the top again.
switch
I mean,
that
these guys,
allows to be
in the days of horse and
a
stuff, they
voting
would talk.
member.
Oh, this is going.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a membership? And the mayor can't get there to vote.
All of that.
I'm not sure. You might have to ask the question, but
No, that makes sense.
That is you.
yeah,
Did you come here for the unveiling of the picture?
council liaison before.
Another column for an extra 3 to 6.
Oh, changed it since.
Just came out, and yeah, just keep up.
Tonight,
Yeah, it was
Tomorrow.
I just got done plowing. Don't need any more. Here we go. Call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Fullerton,
Here.
Christensen,
Present.
Chin,
Here.
Brummett, Scott,
Here.
Rodriguez,
Present.
Newman.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll open public comment. Anybody here interested in addressing the council? How about anybody online?
No hands are raised.
Okay, we're here today to try to choose somebody that may be able to serve the city of Charlotte as an interim city manager. And the way we're going to work this is Mr. Hillard and the committee, Mr. Brummett was on the committee also with the department heads. And we came up with 5 questions. When we bring the candidate in, Mr. Hillard will introduce him and have him set. And then I'll actually ask the question, so they're asked the same. And then after each question, you can feel free to say you want to ask him something further or whatever. And then we will have the department heads at the end of the interview. After we're done, then we'll ask the department heads if they have any questions they'd like to ask of that candidate. And then we'll release the candidate after that. We'll do that. We have 2 candidates available, and I think it'll work really good that way and be, you know, the 30 minutes is what we're trying to shoot for. Not any longer, and hopefully not any shorter. With that said, I don't know, Mr. Hillard, are you within hearing distance? Wait, bring a candidate in. Yeah. Hi, Howard. There. Hi, Howard.
Anthony?
Justin.
Brian Newman.
Jeff Christensen.
If you want to sit right there at the table. Obviously, you know, we're looking for an interim city manager right now.
Yes, sir.
We'll look for other city manager. An interim is important to us right now because Our current manager is leaving in like 10 days. So we've been starting on this process, and so that's where we've got down to. Tiger, do you know if that mic is working or not? So we're good. So we're going to ask you some questions, and then the people sitting behind you are the department heads of the city. And the council I'll ask a question, and then there's only got like 5 or 6 questions. And then the council may ask you further questions, and then the department heads will have a chance at the end to ask you. And we'll try to run this through in 30 minutes, so
Yes, sir.
use your time, wisely.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so first question. Provide a summary of your professional background and experience as an interim city manager.
Specifically as an interim, I'm currently an interim administrator for a sewer and water authority in the Saugatuck Douglas area. Previous to that, my experience is of about 20 years in local government management, spanning about 4 communities. Have a master's in urban planning and public affairs, mostly on the urban planning side. Had done some consulting work around economic development and private planning. Did a little consulting work for some private developers. Was the planning and building administrator in Maryville, Indiana, then their town administrator, then went to the Ann Arbor area where I was the first township manager in Northfield for about 4 or 5 years, and then most recently Park Township, which is the north side of Holland, so the Lake Macatawa area, Lake Michigan area for the last 9 years. And I was their township manager for the last 9 years. So in total, about 20 years of local government management experience across a wide variety of functional areas.
Okay, council questions about this experience? Mr. Shin, anything?
Real quick, we're in the focusing on housing in the city and the lack of and what have you. What experience have you had in that arena? As an urban planner, I would imagine that you've had some, but can you give me any detail?
Yes, sir. So first I want to say, actually, I went to graduate school. My first love was affordable housing. That was the reason I went to graduate school to begin with. Realized quite quickly that that was not going to be a career path for me and ended up becoming a traditional planner. And then eventually, due to promotion, ended up becoming a city manager or township manager. In terms of experience on the housing side, I have quite a bit of experience in planning and zoning. Actually, I trained the current zoning administrator, community development director in Park Township. In addition to that, I'm pretty familiar with the use of brownfield TIF in order to incentivize infrastructure around housing development. That's a new law in the state of Michigan that allows municipalities to take advantage of the brownfield TIF statute, even if a site is not a brownfield. So I think I offer quite a bit of experience in the housing realm. I can't say I'm an expert in housing. I will say that this is a very challenging area, and it is happening all over the state of Michigan, where most communities are having trouble finding new housing, and really the housing development is being concentrated in the wealthiest, most desirable real estate markets. What I would say in terms of generally speaking, incentivizing housing really is a function of subsidy. And the more subsidy that you can provide to write down the cost of construction, the better off you are. So that's really the framework that you begin with. I think the other thing that you have to look at is the nonprofit organizations in your community, whether it's Habitat for Humanity or faith-based nonprofits that are doing housing. They often have a built-in system, if you will, to try and incentivize development, although that's also very challenging. So I acknowledge and respect that this is a challenging issue, but I do have some experience in it.
Can you give us some background or experience with grants and grant writing?
So I've probably in my career received about $2.5 million in grants. In my resume, there's some details around some of those grants. The vast majority of those grants are on the park development side. I've never written a grant for the housing side. There are state grants in what they call the middle, it's like the middle, I think they call it the middle mile. And that's the gap funding if you have a project, if you will, and the project is X amount of dollars, and you have, let's say theoretically $1 million of gap that you need, you can apply to some of those state organizations for that middle mile funding or that gap funding. I have not made one of those applications. I have made tremendous number of parks development applications when it comes to grants. I am very adept at writing grants, so it's not to say that I wouldn't be able to learn. It's really just a matter of understanding the state system. The biggest grants on the housing side is going to be under the Brownfield TIF statute.
Thank you.
Next question, it's a little bit different, more back to the city township stuff. What experience do you have in preparing an annual budget? That'd be city or township, however you want to say it. And what role do you see the city council and the department heads that run the city, what's their role in the budget process?
Yeah, so every year for the past 15 years, I've created the annual budget. Now, that's not to say that I'm actually the one who's doing it. In Park Township for the last 9 or 10 years, we had a finance director. The finance director generally leads the process of creating the annual budget with the manager kind of overseeing the expenditures. There's quite a bit of coordination that exists between a township or a city manager and a director of finance or whoever is charged with that budget process in terms of going through potential new expenditures, potential projects, things of that nature. The department heads really should be leading the process of creating their own budgets. There should, in my opinion, department heads should craft their budget directly and then present that to the manager. There's no entity that's going to know what expenses are necessary than the department heads, and I don't operate in a top-down structure where I dictate, the department head's budget. That is something that comes really from the ground up. It also comes from the board's prioritization, which really should be identified in your strategic plan. So every year, every 6 months, you should go through a planning process of strategic planning to identify what projects and priorities that you have, and those projects and priorities should be funded. It's really important that we remember we fund what we prioritize, and we fund what matters. And so, that's really, in essence, the process. Now, I will tell you that where I am as the interim right now, I'm actually doing the budget all by myself. So I don't have any support from a finance director. Certainly much better when you have a finance professional who is going through the budget as well, but I have quite a bit of finance experience to do the budget process. If I had to, I could do the whole budget process.
And how would the council, how do you see them working in the budget process?
Yeah, so again, I think the criticality of the budget process is to make sure that when you're going through, or prior to going through that budget process, you really look to a strategic plan process with the board. And so you spend 2, 3, 4 hours going through what are your upcoming strategic plans for the year, and then what are those priorities that the board would like to see happen in the community that need to be budgeted for. In terms of the budget process, in terms of the nuts and bolts of it, a lot of it is it's not that the board is not involved, but it's really more staff driven. It's really more a function of what expenditures and line items are necessary for those departments. The board should receive a significant presentation on the budget. So what I have done in the past is we would outline and create the budget. We'd go through our strategic plan. We'd understand what the board's priorities were. We'd create and outline the budget, and then we would have about a 3 to 4 hour presentation to the board, myself and the finance director, on what is in the budget, so that the board is able to go through every department, every line item, and really understand the details. And that's when there might be some back and forth questions that you all have as to what various expenditures are, and that's when you would be receiving a pretty significant report or presentation on revenues and expenditures and things that are of importance.
Can you go ahead and expound a little bit further on your role after department heads present to you a budget?
My role first of all, as an interim, is not going to be to question a lot of those details. What I'm going to be looking at is, do we have a balanced budget? Are we dipping into fund balance in various funds? If we are, is there a reason for that, whether it be infrastructure upgrades, whether it be road paving, whether it be utility improvements? There's got to be a reason for dipping into those fund balances. So I'm going to look at it from a perspective of, is this a sustainable budget? Are we looking out 3-4 years in terms of what our infrastructure needs are, what our asset management planning is? That's what I'm going to look at. I'm going to look to my engineers to identify whether or not we have some structured asset management planning, and is it built into the budget. In terms of direct expenditures, like for example, if the community development director is asking for $7,000 or $10,000 in expenditures for consultancy of zoning and planning issues, I'm not going to nitpick that detail, because that department head is going to know best as to whether or not that's an expenditure that they need. But what I'm going to look at is, do we have a balanced budget? Are we looking at our asset management plan moving forward? Is it reasonable? Are the costs within realm of the previous year? Things of that nature.
Thank you for your answer.
Can you tell me what the largest budget that you've had to produce?
Probably in the neighborhood of about $12 million. That would have been Park Township's budget. It's hard to compare those apples and apples, because it really depends on if you're talking about just general fund budget, various utility budgets, various special fund budgets, things of that nature. But in total, Park Township's budget was about probably 10 to 15, 12 to 15. I don't have the exact number in front of me.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Questions? I'll ask you one more then. When it deals with budgets, and of course, everybody's always out of money by the end. What's your theory on how you decide what you're going to do? Is it across the board cut for everybody? Is it pick and choose, or how do you see that you make the budget become balanced?
Oh, no, it's pick and choose. Across the board cuts, is not realistic. There was a time in my career, if you go back to my time in Northwest Indiana, when I was administrator in Maryville, Indiana, that those are the kind of procedures that were outlined, because the governor had froze the levies of all the municipalities in Northwest Indiana, particularly because they wouldn't pass an option income tax. And that was unique to just Northwest Indiana. When you go back to that period of time, that was a period of time where we were trying to keep the doors open. And so I would go to a council member or the council president and say, hey, I need $400,000 cut. And then if you don't cut $400,000, I'm not going to be able to keep the doors open. That's when you look at those across-the-board cuts. The reality, though, in most communities, it really comes down to prioritization, and it should be a prioritization based on within each department. And so, there are going to be specific issues that are necessary in various departments, and you have to balance that. You have to balance, what one department needs over another, and it really comes down to if you will, a judgment call as to what's most important. And so it's difficult to have just cross the board cuts, because what that does is it doesn't acknowledge that each of these various departments have critical functions, and some of these critical functions may not be able to have an across the board cut.
Just getting the idea. What experience do you have in the area of human resources, including interactions with unions? We have unions in this city, so.
I've had experiences with unions in the past, not a lot. I'm not an expert in unions, but a number of communities I've been a part of have had unions. Park Township did not have unions, but Northfield Township prior to that did. I currently work in an environment that is a union environment as well. In terms of human resources, as many city managers across the country, particularly communities that are not large communities, the city manager acts very much as a human resource professional. And so I have quite a bit of experience when it comes to benefits, when it comes to health insurance, liability insurance benefits, medical benefits, gap funding, gap coverages and gap plans, things of that nature. I also have quite a bit of experience in personnel situations and issues, because particularly in smaller communities, the city manager is the personnel director. There is no separate HR manager. And so I've never had the luxury in any community I've ever been in to have a separate HR manager. I've been that individual. So I'm often, working with the attorney or working with our consultancy staff on various HR-related functions.
Follow up for that. Have you had to, under those circumstances, it seems like the policies without an HR director could go for years without update. Have you had to substantially update anyone that you've been involved with those policies as a functioning HR director without an HR director?
Yeah, so many communities, almost, I would say the vast majority of communities across the state of Michigan would have a policies and procedures handbook that would govern those issues, and that's really a function of the board reviewing those policies and procedures every 2 years or so. I don't know that you need to do it every year, and so I've gone through a number of iterations where the board and myself have gone through those policies and procedures and updated them accordingly. Most recently, for example, the biggest update recently in this area has been I can't think of the name of it right now. It's the time off, sick time off law that was passed, and so all of the communities in Michigan had to update their ESTA policy. And so, again, we didn't have an HR director. I learned about all of the issues and differences in how you can write the ESTA policy and presented that to the board.
Tell us why you are the best candidate for this position.
I'm not. The truth is that, all I know about the other person who is a candidate is he's a previous city manager, I think a retired city manager. It really comes down to fit, and it really comes down to personality. I would say there's a lot of city managers that can do the job, and I can't say that there's a best. What I can say is that it really comes down to who is the kind of personality that you all want to work with, and am I the personality that fits with your model? And so that's really what it comes down to. There are plenty of city managers, lots that have more experience than I, more qualifications, some that have less. It really comes down to fit and fit.
Are you currently a full-time manager somewhere, or are you in an interim position?
So both, yeah. So I left Park Township about 4 months ago. There was a mutual separation. I had been there for about 9 years, which is quite a long tenure in the city management world. I've never been one to jump around. There's some unique things that are going on in my life personally, where I'm not ready to necessarily commit to a full-time position. I had taken an interim role. It is a full-time interim role, and I was evaluating whether or not I was going to apply for the permanent position. I decided actually not to apply for the permanent position because I didn't think I was the right fit for that organization. But I am still the interim administrator there until they bring on a full-time director. The reason why I didn't apply for the full-time position is because it's really a utility. It's a sewer and water utility. And while I have experience in sewer and water utilities, it's at a high level. And so one of the things that I've done around sewer and water utilities is consolidate utilities, look at the financing around those issues. This is a position that really needs somebody who understands the nuts and bolts of utility, right? Somebody who could say, I know why that pump is broken. This is a bit of an exaggeration, but I'm not sure I'd be the one to distinguish between the pump and the pipe. So, they really need somebody who is a more direct, detailed person with experience in water and sewer utilities as an operator. And so that's not me. And so it's become clear to me that while I can help them bridge that gap, this is not the right position for me. And so I'm still looking for what that next move is.
Do you have an estimated timeline on when you think a replacement will be found for you at your current position?
At the sewer and water utility?
Yes, sir.
They've made an offer. They've made an offer to somebody. I don't know if that individual is accepted. Right now, what the thought process is that particular person probably will come on board in the next few weeks, but it's not a given. I'm not privy to whether or not that person's accepted or not. So, and I am not bound to that position. That organization knows that if an opportunity comes along, that I'm not going to be in there full time. I'm not the full-time guy, and I'm not bound to staying there until a new person comes on board. I've made that very clear to the board.
Yeah, so you trying to figure out whether or not, as interim, but are you still in the market for a full-time city manager or township manager position? Or are you, some of the people that we've had before, they've just said, that's all I'm interested in because I'm retired, or, I don't want to go full-time anywhere anymore. So, where are you at career-wise in terms of whether or not we want to make sure that the interim that we hire is here until we do hire a full-time, and we don't have to change again in the midstream. So, and we know that the hiring of a new manager could take 6 months, 12 months, but we need some assurances that we're not going to have to go after another interim once we offer this position.
Yeah, so I think that that's reasonable. I have applied for both interim positions and full-time positions. If I take this position as an interim, I would expect that we would come up with some kind of contract, and I would, I would honor that contract, whether that's 6 months or a year or up to a year. I'm not, all city managers are governed by the ICMA Code of Ethics. And there's a very specific clause in the ICMA Code of Ethics that indicates that if you take a position, you should not, remove yourself from that position within 2 years. Obviously, as an interim position, there's a little bit more flexibility there. But if I take on the interim role for you all, then you can expect that I will be there until then you guys receive a full-time manager. I would potentially entertain, also applying for the full-time role. It would just depend on the fit as we went to see how things were going.
Okay. Short.
I've got another question. And right now, we're in the position that a lot of our department heads are fairly new to the city, that they've taken over positions of people that have been here for 20, 30, I don't know how many years, but so it's a fairly new administration. Tell me if you've had any experience where you've had to either hire or work with a new administration in the position that you've held.
So I've probably hired every position that the department's here. Over the 20 years that I've been in management, I've probably hired and or trained almost every single department head that you would have in your community, with the exception probably of an assessor role. Although I've hired a few assessors in my career, I can't speak to I cannot say to that I could train an assessor. That's a very specialized field. In terms of the zoning and community development role, I'm quite adept and experienced. I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I'm close. I actually trained the zoning administrator for Park Township, and she is now a rock star. She's still there. I have a considerable amount of experience in Parks and Rec, Public Works. Throughout all of the departments, I'm very confident and comfortable with being able to train and not necessarily, I don't know if the word is train, but maybe walk beside people so that they're feeling as though that they have that support while they go through their learning process. I will tell you that when I went to Northfield Township, which was prior to Park Township, I was the first township manager. And so I essentially built that organization from the ground up. They previously had a elected official run government, which is not, it's not uncommon in small townships. It is becoming less and less common, and even townships are moving towards manager forms of government, but I was the first. And so I did everything from, being the first person to codify their ordinances, the first person to create a municipal civil infraction program as opposed to going through a misdemeanor framework. I don't know if that is if you're familiar with that. I was the first person to begin organizing a sort of parks function, hired their first community services director as kind of like a senior services director, but we changed it to community services. So the reality is, in Northfield Township for 4 or 5 years, I essentially built that system from the ground up. And there was a lot of conflict that existed within that organization, because as I'm sure you would expect, when you change over all of the elected officials, you're essentially literally firing your own board. And so the board had made the decision to make the clerk part-time. I had to be the one who said to the clerk, after she had been working there for 25 years or 20 years or whatever it was, I had to be the one to decide when she went part-time, which is effectively eliminating her job. That was also true of the treasurer, although the treasurer was a little bit easier for various reasons. So suffice this to say that, I have quite a bit of experience and a breadth of, and a depth of experience in local government. And it's actually been one of the things that I've been well known for is, the extent of my knowledge base.
Okay, before we run completely out of time, I told the department heads that they would certainly be able to ask a question, but that's up to you.
Describe a time you inherited a broken process or department, and what was your first move?
The first thing that comes to mind is, just because I had just mentioned it, is when I got to Northfield Township, I find out that in order for the community to write a ticket, it had to go through a misdemeanor process. And that is actually a very old system, but some communities still do it. And one of the reasons why communities do it, oh, thanks, yeah, appreciate that. One of the reasons why communities do that is because every kind of ticket goes in front of the magistrate, right? Every single one. There's a downside to it, and the downside is it takes 6 months. It could take 3 to 6 months to go through the process. There's a reason why some communities like that, and the communities that like that, in particular the elected officials that like that, are the ones that don't really want a lot of enforcement, right? And so there was an elected official who was on that board and said, Howard, I don't want you to go to a civil infraction program. And I says, why? And the gentleman, who is a gentleman by the name of Wayne Dockett, says, because I know that if you want to try to write a ticket or enforce anything, it'll take you 6 months. And I am a no government guy. I don't want government in my life. I want less government. And so I recognize that that is a perspective of some individuals, but the reality is modern governmental process dictates that if you're going to write a ticket for somebody who hasn't cut their lawn or has trash in their front yard, you don't want to go through the 3 to 6 month process and have to go to the magistrate and all the rigmarole that it comes with. You just want to provide them a ticket. And so we took that system and went from a misdemeanor system to a municipal civil infraction, which includes writing ordinances, which includes kind of documenting what your civil infraction fines are, what your civil infractions are identified as, what you can write a civil infraction for, and so on and so forth. So that was a pretty lengthy process upgrade, if you will, that resulted in more code enforcement, faster code enforcement, more efficient code enforcement.
How do you manage relationships with DDAs, independent boards, or authorities?
The same way that I manage relationships with the Board of Trustees, right? These are individuals and entities that are the legislative entities of the city. And so those relationships need to be nurtured and respected and collaborative. And so when it comes to the DDA, it's the voice, it's a prominent voice, a voice that needs to be heard, and they have to have autonomy in what it is that they're doing. I don't come in and say, hey, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. I provide opinions, I provide suggestions, I provide guidance when appropriate, but these are boards that are legislative entities and they should be respected as such.
I think the last question from us, but keep down the narrow path of an interim manager, what type of environment would make a challenge for that time period, and how would you manage that?
When you say what type of environment would pose a challenge, can you elaborate on that?
Not necessarily, just the type of environment that an interim manager would face.
Got it. So I think one of the things that it's important for an interim manager to recognize is that you're keeping the doors open. You're keeping the organization running. You're not trying to upset the apple cart. You're not trying to do too much. Trying to provide value where appropriate, but you're you're setting the organization up for future success. Now, I will tell you in practicality, that's not so much different from a permanent manager. I would say that over the years, and frankly, I've made a lot of mistakes in my career. What I will find and what I will say is that you're always trying to set the organization up for success in the future. And you're always trying to do that in a way that is not too aggressive or too earth-shattering, where folks feel as though their foundation of what they sit on is being shooken. And so, I think in some respects, an intern has to walk that line a little bit more than a full-time manager. But to some extent, I don't know that it's that much different. I think, for example, let's say I looked at, and it's not the case, but let's say I looked at your website and I said, this website doesn't have the appropriate technology, it doesn't have the right look and feel, on and on and on. As an intern, I may not say, hey, let's redo the website right away. As an intern, I may say, hey, when the full-time manager comes, here's 2 or 3 organizations that the board may want to look at or receive proposals from when the new person comes on board. Again, you don't want to make too much change and upset the apple cart too much, but you want to set the organization up for success.
This question is, do you have anything that you'd like to ask us in the couple minutes we got?
Yeah, so what do you see as the challenges? There's some stuff in the newspaper, and there's some challenges that are evident, if you will, or obvious. And so how do you all, I know that some of you are very new, you just got seated. I know the mayor is quite experienced and was building department and public safety in your career, which is a really good background. But what do you see as the challenges that need to be addressed and need to be addressed in the next 3 to 6 months?
I can take a quick stab at that. Is that we've got a lot of things going on, a lot of things. Next council meeting will be very busy with all kinds of things that can't stop. And we just need to make sure we have somebody that just steps in, and when Mr. Hillard walks away, we keep on moving. We just can't go backwards. There's so many things going on. Parks grants with townships, fire code's going to be adopted and implemented, and the building department's going to come back here. We can't stop in the middle. So that's we're going to make sure that those things keep going. He talked about housing. Mr. Chin did. That's a big thing. They've got there's just a lot going on. So that's really what we're going. Want to say something quick?
I just had a quick question for you. You don't have to go into detail on answering it, but looking for your philosophy on customer service and media relations. As far as most all of the things will go through the interim city manager in the future, as they should, and so addressing the city constituents with their concerns would come to you. What would be the policy or the procedure that you would individually take in that matter?
Yeah, so my philosophy is, I don't know if you know, but it's kind of the Brené Brown definition of empathy. So the Brené Brown definition of empathy is that you listen and understand somebody so deeply that even if you don't agree with them, you totally get their position. You understand their position, you get it, and it makes sense to you even if you don't agree with it. That's really what you have to do from a customer service perspective. Listen and ask a lot of questions. In terms of media, I'm a big proponent in putting out positive press releases. I ask my department heads to do that whenever there's an opportunity, whether it's a parks grant or some event that's going on, or something of that nature. And in terms of working or responding to the media, I'm very transparent. I don't keep anything from the media. I try to actually encourage the media to show up to meetings, because I believe that that is part of a good functioning democracy. But what I will tell you is that I don't air our dirty laundry. And I think that's really the key, is you can be transparent, you can be forthright in your information without getting into the nuts and bolts and nitty gritty and getting into the newspaper about who's fighting with who and all of the other stuff. That's the stuff that we don't need to air. That's the stuff that happens behind closed doors. We praise publicly and we criticize privately. And that goes for the media and it goes for the community. You'll never hear me say, oh, this council member did that, or I don't like this, or I don't like that. That's not the way we operate. We operate as a professional unit, and we should all be growing, if you will, in the same direction.
Okay, Mr. Rodriguez had a 30-second comment.
Just real quick, to answer your question, you're asking about some of the challenges. And I have been up here the longest, although Kevin here definitely has the most experience with this city. But here's some of the challenges that I see. One is this group right here really loves this city. So they're very active. They want to know what's going on. They're very involved. But the problem is sometimes it gets out of line. And what I mean by that is, oh, I need to talk to this department head about this or this person about that, you know? And so I think one of the challenges is just making sure you let us know, hey, we got that. Because we all up here desire to stay in our lanes. We just love the city, and we're very active in the things that are going on. Sometimes we have questions, we're wondering about things, we want to know about things, and maybe the timing is just wrong. So that'll be a challenge. To me, the budget is something that's big, not because the department heads can't prepare the budget. They'll do a great job at that. But council there's been a lot left to be desired as far as our ability to really speak into what we're looking to see as the direction the city goes. And that's mainly because of a lot of turnover. So being able to get with us and really see some of our goals and visions. Of course, Mr. Hillard has a plan laid out, which we call the framework. That'll help us a lot. But and I think that's just my main two comments. Thanks.
Okay, well, we appreciate your time, unless you have something else you want to
Yeah, I just wanted to, very quickly, I know we're out of time, but very quickly, I just wanted to respond to the gentleman's, Mr. Rodriguez's comment. You're absolutely right, and here's what I would say. This is what I've learned over 20-plus years of local government. So whether you hire me or not, take this as for what it's worth, a grain of salt. It's advice that's not been asked for. And that is this. You all will be more effective. In fact, the more you stay at a high level, the more you stay at a policy level, the more effective you will be. And there's actually a management philosophy that's so deep and so written about to explain the why. I won't go in the why. The higher you stay at a policy level and the less you stay out of the details, the more effective you all will be, the more you will get done for the city, the more things you will get resolved and passed. And so what I will say is that comment about roles is really important. And every time you find yourself trying to or wanting to, not because you're wanting to do anything nefarious, but just because it's a desire to learn. Anytime you want to go to department heads or particularly staff members and get into the weeds and get into the details, just remember, the higher up you stay, the more effective you be. The further you go into the details, the less you will accomplish. And that has borne out in every single community I've ever been a part of over my entire career. It's never failed. That philosophy has never failed.
All right, can you grab Mr. Hillard?
First of all, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it.
We thank you for coming.
sure that he has the microphone.
Let me ask him. I don't have any control over the mic.
When I had those, I had to hold down the middle button for a
That
second.
one has to be turned
and then
on.
Release it.
Over and over and over.
It's green.
Don't hear you, though.
He says he has everything unmuted.
It's on now, isn't it?
Not to us.
Maybe when he turns, he could just hand him that mic.
Is that one that gets
Just share it.
So I can just grab.
one out? It has the podium mic on, but I don't.
Yeah, there was one in the selection thing.
We'll get there. We'll get there. It's
They're gonna
just a
take
little
away the
longer.
switch because it was too much power for it.
Yes.
All right, this is Vincent.
Vincent, yep.
That's it. Get it right. What's it like your first through these interview processes?
I've been in worse situations, for sure.
That's for sure. But a tree or two on the porch.
Hi there. Scott.
Hey, Joe Chen.
Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Glad to have you here.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
Council, and then behind you is sets of department heads of the city. They'll be able to ask you some questions at the end. And we've got like 5 questions to just ask you, and everybody always thinks that, 5's not enough, and we ran over. We certainly didn't need 15, did we? So, first one, you can talk to us about, but provide a summary of your professional background and experience as an interim city manager.
Well, I've been doing this surprisingly for 42 years in local government. I spent 32 as a chief administrative officer, either a city manager or a county administrator. I ended up retiring allegedly in June of 23, and in Monroe, and that was my last stop. Was there for about 7 years. And so, in total, 32 years with that, I think 5, 6 different communities. And I got to a point where I kind of wanted to go back and do a little work, particularly in the wintertime. And so Gibraltar came around, and I did that for about 7 months. And then as that was winding down, Dundee came open, and I did that for probably close to 8 months as their village manager. So, in both of them, they're, each had some issues that they had to resolve, and it's certainly involved with that, addressing those, so, in my tenure.
Questions? Time? The next question is, this will get to where you can talk about your experience, but what experience do you have in preparing an annual budget? And what role do you see for the city council and the department heads in the process of preparing a budget? Tell us how it works.
Well, I'm almost probably pushing close to, with the communities I've worked in and the consulting work I've done on the side, probably close to 50 budgets over, the 42-year period. But generally, I like to start with what are the priorities of the governing board, the city council in this case, and then obviously meet in advance, probably with some of the department heads. What do you see as the issues that may be coming up and necessary? So when the dialogue takes place with the manager and the council, I got a little background as to what those needs might look like, and come prepared as we talk with council as to what their priorities may be as well. So that starts the process. A lot of times I'll look at doing a forecast as to where you think you're going to end up at the end of the fiscal year, start doing some revenue and general expenditure forecasting. Usually there's quite a bit of predictability from year to year, and so you can get a pretty good idea where you think things may be going, so that when you meet with council that have an idea as to where the priorities may, if there's any changes that need to be made, how to go about doing that.
Can you ask the question that you asked at the last? Right at the end?
Well, I wonder if
Kinda
you would
figured
like,
into that stuff.
well, I'm trying to remember what my question was, but I'm in the process right now, I was just thinking about the second part of the question, which is, the department heads and what role do they play in the process? So I don't know if you can.
I can elaborate a little bit more, but usually what I like to do is to know if there's any changes that they anticipate or any issues, equipment, if there's personnel-related things of that nature, so that prior to meeting with the city council, I can at least give them an alert that here's items that they have on the horizon if you wish to contemplate that during the process of setting up priorities. But I also kind of dig deep and try to understand a little bit of how their operational structure is so that, I'm at least pretty familiar with it. I will say that in both interim cases, I spent a lot of time on the budget. They had I don't want to say, they were not it was not well-structured, let's put it that way. And so I had to do a lot of digging to understand how things worked and functioned. But ultimately, I like on the front end, here's a general picture of it with the forecast based on, input that I see, input from the departments, and then set out a process going forward with council as to, how they want to approach the budget process prior to its adoption.
The portion of my question was just, what does he see as his, main role after the budget had been turned in? I guess I'll go ahead and ask that question to make sure each candidate has the opportunity to answer the same questions. And that was just after, typically you have a budget turned into you from department heads and kind of what their sort of needs are. What do you see as your main role after that?
Well, a lot of it is just reviewing what it is and preparing, recommendations associated with that. And again, this is kind of where a manager and the council have to have some dialogue and have a rapport, is that in some cases, councils have been comfortable with me putting in a recommendation into the budget. In other cases, leave it on the side. Here's what the cost would be, and we can add it in if that's the pleasure of the council. So it can be done either way. And again, it depends on the rapport that the manager has with the council. But in most cases, I prefer to have the council, put their blessings to it. Sometimes will put it into a separate line item if they're inclined to kind of a placeholder, if you will. If you want to pull the trigger on this, we can, load it into the budget after the manager's recommendation line, and that way you can go forward with it. Or if you don't want it, then you just move it into a contingency line item or do some other priority that you may have.
You got something, right? Let me, as long as we're on the budget, I'll ask the question I asked. So when you're doing this budget, then how do you prefer when the budget is overdrawn and you don't have as much as you thought coming in? Do you prefer the way of across-the-board cuts or specific cuts? How do you do that?
I think there's specific cuts, to be honest with you. And in part, there are probably varying priorities that the council and the public will have. And in some cases, I've provided a package of alternatives for council to pick from. Okay, if you do this, this is how much you can take out of it. But I don't think that, I'm not a big fan of just doing across-the-board cuts. I think you need to make a decision as to where those priorities are and adjust from there. That's the pleasure of the council.
Okay, Mr. Chin.
While doing the budget, can you let me know what kind of experience or what your philosophy is in regards to as asset management or capital improvement plans?
Phenomenally important. I smile with that because in Dundee, we literally, I said, you've got to do PASER report for your streets, your water asset management plan and reliability study along with it, as well as your sewer reliability. And you can't make really sound, efficient decisions in the absence of having all of those packages together. So they are a phenomenally critical element in putting together a good capital improvements. I mean, you know, the obvious is, the last thing you want to do is do a road and then rip it up the following year to do a water main. You know, it just, I think it helps with the planning process, but they're critical to know what you have and how to prioritize which ones go first and which ones will wait later as financial resources would become available. But yeah, in Dundee, we did all of them. They went years without the Pazer, which is a street, and you should be doing that every 3 years at a minimum, I think.
Our charter calls for a budget presentation by the manager, which shows the department head budget and then the city manager's recommendations. I don't know if that's true with other municipalities, but how comfortable are you with that process?
Very familiar with it, comfortable with it. And, you know, I think if there's any variances between the two, you know, explain what they are. So it's, I will tell you that my last finance director did a very good job of handling, you know, any kind, he'd do an initial review, and most of the time, all those were pretty well taken care of before it came to me reviewing the departmental budgets. But in the past, when I was a smaller organization, I was the one that, you know, if there's a line item cut here, you know, whether it's, you know, just based on historical trends, you probably don't need that much, or if something happened, then, you know, I would end up cutting it there if I thought it was more than necessary. But, you know, you always put and explain why that variance takes place. And usually there's not a whole lot of them, particularly a smaller organization. It's just, you can probably put them on a half page.
Mr. Newman.
I think we asked the previous candidate, what's your dollar amount as far as your average budget that you've managed in your career?
Well, the last one I had in Monroe was over 70 million. We had 185 employees, a couple other places that I had worked. When I was down in Florida, a little over a year, not quite a year, but you know, that one was pushing 50 million and 200 and something employees. And so the county administrator, you know, we had 200 employees, and I think that one was much smaller, but that was, I've been gone, gosh, almost 23 years. So I think that budget was somewhere around 15 million in the general fund, somewhere around there. So, and I will tell you the one thing, when I was, you know, in my late 20s, I was the principal budget analyst for Lee County, Florida, Fort Myers being the county seat. At that time, it was one of the 5th fastest growing counties in the nation. And, you know, I was involved with putting together the capital improvements program budget. It was $1 billion over a 5-year period, you know, A to Z, water, sewer, roads, toll bridges, spring training facilities, you name it. It was pretty complicated and complex, and I'm comfortable with that. You know, that experience helped me immensely.
Mr. Christian.
I was just looking through your resume and I see you're certified as a Michigan Emergency Financial Manager. Have you ever been called upon those services in any city in Michigan?
No, I did have one that was recruiting me, and then I ended up turning it down because I accepted that position in Mount Dora, Florida. I had the offer in, I'll just mention Lincoln Park at the time, and you know, the benefit of it is I stay here in Michigan, didn't pay nearly as much, and I remember the search consultant, you know, knowing that I had been offered the position in Mount Dora, he goes, "Come on, Mount Dora, Lincoln Park," so. But that was the one, and I had applied for my hometown, the city of Flint. Didn't get that one, unfortunately, for a lot of people, myself included. But
one more thing, if I may. I see you were assistant city manager at the city of Belding, which is where I grew up.
So, no kidding.
And I know throughout the years the issues that they've had. So anyone that can survive that is impressive to me.
I will tell you, if I may just add, as a young professional, I hadn't been a city manager yet, I learned more in the less than 2 years than any place else I'd worked. There were so many problems that they had, And I will tell you that I learned a lot of lessons there just with things that would go wrong.
Did you work with Mr. Niemela?
I did. He hired me.
He's my mom's neighbor.
Oh, no kidding. You're up on, was it North? I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be
Thank
darned.
you.
Yeah.
What experience do you have in the area of human resources, including interactions with unions?
Well, starting with the union end of it, been involved with just about every element of human resource management, certainly the collective bargaining process, any kind of labor relations as far as grievances and those related items, involved with job descriptions, pay classifications, hiring, terminations, fringe benefits, pay plans. I may have mentioned that already, but just about every aspect of it. Having worked in small towns, you're going to get your hands on a lot of it over the years.
Have you always liked the human resources side of?
I don't have a problem with it. No, I like the collective bargaining process. Surprisingly, but yeah, it's part of what the job entails. It's necessary, and sometimes you've got to make some difficult. I mean, I'll tell you, one of them with Dundee, I ended up doing a termination. It's unfortunately over the years you get used to that if you have to. In this case, the conduct was so egregious that there didn't seem to be any other alternative. So but yeah, that's part of it, and I'm comfortable pretty much with all facets of it. Some of them I can do better than others. Not crazy about the pay classification stuff, although I saw that was one of the 30 things that you had in there, but it's necessary. But yeah, I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah, I had a question on that with the previous. One of the things that surprises me about, or that I've learned in the 2 years since I've done this, is that the city manager is also HR. I'm kind of surprised by that, and I'm kind of wondering. The more I ask around, like, to me that seems like a risk. There are so many other things that you do, and I'm just wondering. I feel like updates might be a low priority, and I'm wondering when the last time you had a city was so far behind that you had to, for instance, update their employee handbook or something like that.
Boy, I'll use. Although we had an HR department, there was a lot of dated human resource policies, general administrative policies, and so we put a plan of attack in place clearly. I think the first one, the harassment and bullying type of policies are the ones that are, make sure that's there. But there's a lot of other ones, and so we must have changed probably a dozen at least. And what it did was it also allowed me to. They didn't do in-service programs. And so one of the things that I started doing, and it freaked everybody out the first time, is, well, here we're going to talk about some updated policies, and everyone, what's they going to do, fire everybody here? They were a little nervous because they're not used to it. But no, we got to the employees. I went to the water plants, DPW yard, had employees in City Hall, and police department. They came in groups and just say, here's some changes in the policy that you need to know, and here's why we're doing it, and we're going to continue to update things. And then if there's other general things that are going, to provide them with that update. But yeah, it for whatever reason, it seems to be the last item that you take care of, and you never seem to get around to it unless you put a focus on it.
Thank you.
Did you have one? Tell us why you are the best candidate for this position.
Well, I've always said I don't know if I am. I think I can do the job, but there's times where I actually had applied for a job and I didn't get it. The mayor called me, and so I asked him, I says, well, who did you make the offer to? He mentioned the name, and I go, I'll be honest with you, I think he may actually be better for this community than me. Seriously, I did say that. But I just think my experience, broad experience, a combination of larger organizations where you have some, you need structure. But also, the Dundee and the Gibraltar were kind of fun because I actually get my hands on things that I haven't touched in years, where I had to do some, I'm not going to say real work, but but more detail items that, you know, putting out a bid spec on BidNet, writing it up. We're always had, you know, an engineer, architect handle some of that. And so it was kind of fun to get back to working in a small community where, you know, doing what I did earlier in my career with some of those details. But I just think the the broad range of experience, and I just think the temperament, I'm not too up, not too down. I've dealt with, you know, again, I know there's, you know, some challenges here, and I've worked in coming into a number of organizations where there was some difficulties, and over time was able to get them calmed down and functioning and moving forward. And so,
Anything else? We're gonna ask the department heads who are behind you, if you just take that mic out of there and
okay.
hang on to it.
Oh, the mic itself. There you go.
And no, they'll ask you a couple of questions they have, and
Describe a time you inherited a broken process or department, and what was your first move?
Well, one of the recent ones was when I was down in Monroe. Our building department had a terrible reputation. And frankly, what happened was I'm there probably a couple of weeks, and I had the Chamber of Commerce Executive Board take me out to lunch, and it was essentially a interdiction, if you will, that you got to fix this problem. And it took me a while to get it because they were so, you know, it was difficult, the process. But, you know, over a couple of year period, it was a big challenge to get there. But it was all related to customer experience, customer service related that. So we had a consultant that I'd worked with when I was in Farmington, helped with the process, and you know, eventually we got there. But part of it is just the ongoing striving for the entire organization to be more customer focused. I mean, in fact, if anything, they told me when I got the job in Monroe, there's a question, and I said, you know what, you always got to try and find your way to yes. You may not get there, but if you don't, at least you made the effort and you can provide a rationale for not being able to meet whatever the expectation is. So, but that was one of the cases with the department that it was a challenge because it had such a poor reputation. Developers didn't want to come in, and it took us a while to kind of turn it around. But
How do you manage relationships with authorities, DDAs, or independent boards?
well, just you have to meet with them. You know, part of it is each of them are going to have some sort of plan, whether it's a tax increment plan with the DDA. I think you have a corridor improvement authority as well. Planning Commission is going to have a master plan, zoning ordinance. Attend the meetings to get to know them and understand how they work, function, what their priorities are. That's really what it is, and be honest with them with whatever issues that may arise with that. You have to build the trust. That really is the key to any success with a manager, and whether it's with the council, employees, boards, commissions, the public, you've got to be able to develop a level of trust where they're comfortable and confident that what you say is genuinely true.
As an interim manager, what type of challenges or environment that could be challenging could you come into or walk into, and how would you manage that or get past one of those challenges?
It's all situational. I'll tell you that. And part of it is stressing, you know, what the council preferences for the manager, the interim manager. You know, you can do the day-to-day, handle the routine items, and as I put in there, sometimes things unexpectedly happen. You know, employee termination. We've had a major water main break when I was in Dundee that required a boil water order for the entire city at 9:30 Sunday night in March, and so you got to go in at that hour and handle those type of things. But there's an element where you just take care of some of the day-to-day things, again, whatever the expectation of the council. And then sometimes there's projects they want you to work on. There may be projects, for example, when I was in Gibraltar, I said, after a few weeks, I go, your refuse contract is going to expire here in 5 months. You need to get this thing going. You want me to write it up or look for a renewal? And he says, well, write up a spec, and we did. But those just things, observations with time that you get to recognize. And, you know, Dundee had a bond issue, a referendum that approved a $5.8 million road millage. And so had to do the bond work on that, hired, you know, go through a process of selecting an engineer to do the design and the construction administration for it as well. And then, you know, lastly is just, you know, again, through the council, what the expectation is. What do you want? Do you want the interim to be involved with trying to take care of a handful of things that they feel would be necessary for the new manager coming in to be successful? That's very critical. And so that's just something that the council would have to make some determination. So hate to say that, not a direct answer, but it's a whole gamut of things that that have to be considered as to what that role with the interim manager would be.
Quick questions up here?
Okay.
So I was curious on your philosophy on the approach to customer service, that being the residents who would be directed at the manager for answers. In addition to that, any relations with media? What's your philosophy on that approach?
The media is different. And I say that because early in my career, you know, you would get to meet with the local newspaper and see what their publication deadline was. So if you had something, try and make sure you could meet it with them. But, you know, you meet with them. But it's become more, how do you manage the social media end of it, which is harder, in part because most small organizations don't have the resources to be posting items on Facebook all the time. The update of the website is a little more challenging. But if you've got a newspaper, you know, clearly, you know, meet with them, find out what, you know, how they get to know you. And then, you know, part of it is having a list. And I say that is, for example, when we did that water main break, you know, I'm calling council members driving down I-94 from Farmington to Dundee, and, you know, at 10 o'clock at night, and fortunately the phone is now connected to your radio in your car, but just say, hey, you're going to wake up tomorrow and school's going to be closed. I want you to know that in advance. But the other part of it is getting the communications to Eagle, getting it out to the local media. So we had, you know, contacted all the radio stations in our area there, you know, WJR, WWJ, Toledo stations, we'd sent that as well as the television stations. And in the case, they had some contact on a very confidential item with a Channel 7 out of Detroit news reporter that was doing some digging on an employee that eventually was terminated. We were able to keep that under wraps, but, you know, it was a hard, you know, jousting to keep that from becoming a bigger issue than what it was. So I'm not sure I gave you a direct answer, though. It's just each of it's a little bit different depending on the circumstances and the media that you have available.
If I had a resident in my district that had an issue or concern, and I knew where to go, would you rather I come to you with it? Or would you rather I go straight to a department head, ask it, answer it, and get it taken care of?
It depends on the nature of it. You know, a lot of times your charter, everything has to go through the city manager. Again, it's a trust thing. There are certain things where if it's pretty small and you know that it is could easily be handled by the department head. I've never had the problem with that. The department head has always told me, you know, I got a call from this council member regarding this, and this is how I took care of it. Oh, okay. And I don't view that as anything much different than a resident calling directly to the department to take care of something. But you do have to build a trust that, with that. And, you know, over the years, the department heads, if they've had any interaction with council members, they always have let me know what the nature of it is. And, you know, I'm not one of those that everything has to run through me. Now, there's problems that do occur sometimes, and I'll use the example in Monroe. When I got there, council members got involved with addressing problems and were making some commitments that they couldn't honor. And over time, probably the first couple of years, it took the mayor and myself, if you got, mayor would always say, just take it to the manager. Let him deal with it. He'll keep you updated. He'll tell you if it can be done or if it's taken care of. And if he can't, he'll tell you why. It makes it easier. It takes, you know, depending on the nature, but that's the judgment that you have to make is, you know, is it pretty small or is this something that may require a little more effort and cost and that type of thing.
I mean, for my aspect, I would rather that we have a process that we follow regularly.
Yeah.
And to go through you and
Yeah,
I think would be a much, and so I was just curious kind of.
Yeah, and that may be something, you know, again, part of it is, you know, with going forward, how council interacts, you know, with the manager going forward. If that's a policy that the council's comfortable with, that will certainly help the new manager with coming in with whatever interaction that may take place. So that's actually a good thing. But again, over time, I've not been one to make that a big issue. But sometimes if that's easier for council, that's understandable too.
Thank you.
What questions would you like to ask us or the department heads at all that you're wondering about?
I think I covered it with what is your expectation for the interim position? And I do feel strongly that in some ways, you know, my preference is if I'm here, I would like to do as much as possible to help with the success of the individual that you select as the new manager. But I can also just kind of keep the seat warm and that type of thing if that's needed or necessary. But you know, that's more for you. And I guess the other expectation, how many hours do you expect, you know, for this position? I can, you know, work 5 days a week if that's needed, or if you need a little bit less than that, that would be nice to know.
They want you to just.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Hey, now we can.
Okay. Yeah, I get too comfortable sometimes.
And we had that same discussion. We have a ton of projects going on right now.
Yeah.
And it's going to take somebody that can come in and just take the torch from Mr. Hillard and keep on moving with it without putting it out.
Yeah.
We don't want to put it out. So that would be, you know, very important to everybody. Because everybody up here's got something going on and even the new people are getting involved. So.
When you saw the, I think Mr. Hilliard had sent my agreement that I had with Dundee, and it had 20 to 24 hours. Well, I got there and I go, holy cow, they're going to need a lot more than that. And there was no problem with it. And similarly in Gibraltar, once I got there, you go, well, there's a little bit more here that you need to take care of, and they recognized that and didn't have any problem with the additional hours. So.
I guess the answer to your question then would be, throw it back at you.
Yeah.
How many would you be available for?
I can work just a straightforward, you know, 40-hour work week, you know, Monday through Friday. I mean, even in Dundee, I came in on weekends to work on some budget stuff because I had to get it done with other things. But other than that, yeah, I'm fine with that.
So you'd be fine with either way?
Yeah.
There's no other questions, and we're pretty close on time. We thank you for coming in.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity for consideration.
And I'm glad to discuss this, and I'm sure Mr. Hillard will be, if Mr. Hillard's out there, he can come and.
Knock on the door there. Thank you.
He's coming.
Okay.
So, so we gotta draw this out for a minute until he gets back. What? If you need it. He'll be right back. He was part of the committee, so I can talk about that, because he was involved with it. I think it worked out very good to have the department heads there. I think it worked out good to have them here today, because, you know, there's a lot of brain power sitting at that table about how to run the city. And we don't nowhere near that, have that. So that's important. But we did, Mr. Hillard sent out about, it was either 18 or 19 phone calls, emails, whatever, to different people. We got 5 back total. And it was, 2 of them were for 145 and 150 per hour. That was pretty easy to weed it out. And we got down to 3, and out of the 3, there was 2, the 2 that we interviewed, that were available to come to work tomorrow or the next day. So that's how we got to 2 instead of 3 or 4 or 5. And I think that was a pretty good way of doing it. The department heads were all on board with that. And I'll just tell you right now why I think it's very important, only because I was a department head. If you can get your department heads involved in the process, they don't hire the manager anyway, they don't tell the manager what to do. But if we have them involved and they say, yeah, that person seems to be good, and that's who we end up with, and then they don't like it, oh, woe is me, because they were involved. So, I mean, that's a good way to get their opinion, and if they don't like somebody, they'll speak, you know, and if they do like somebody, because you're gonna have same problem with the full-time manager, you know, when this committee gets going, I mean, they're gonna have to find us that group, who we're gonna hire, and once we get that group hired, then we gotta look at what their parameters are gonna be. Are they gonna run the whole show, and we're just gonna, you know, whatever. But we'll have to decide that. You know, the committee kind of picks that out and brings all that stuff back to the council, and then we'll choose somebody and go with it. And all I did was went over what we talked about at the committee level meeting. So now that you know how we got here with this committee, there isn't a whole bunch of people out there that want a job for the right kind of money. I did the numbers, and if you do the numbers at $150 an hour for 40 hours a week, that's 6,000 times 50 weeks is about 300,000.
It's a good gig.
I don't know how you want to proceed. We can tell you the numbers, and that if that means anything to you. The first candidate, at 40 hours, his rate was $55.29 with $11.06 plus $3 of mileage plus another $1. His final amount per hour was $70.35. If we could get a contract for that, he would be available immediately. The second candidate, his reason I had to add all that stuff in is because he requested mileage. Everything we went into, I remember Thomas, we were paying for a room at Holiday Inn. It got real pricey in a hurry, like $2,500 a month or more. The second candidate is at $90 as an independent contractor. That's it. No mileage, no room and board, no nothing. So that's an easy one to look at.
What was that number?
What, 90? And if you want to compare that to the manager we have right now, Rob right now with his benefits is $80.85. So it is more, but that's what you would expect. And so it's up to you guys what you want to move with. If we're going to make any kind of a motion, the motion has to include that we would have our city manager do a contract with him including a background check, before it could be official, and we'd have to have a contract back, preferably by next Monday. Because it would be my hope that we had somebody here by Tuesday morning that could work with Rob for, what do we have, 5 or 6 days left? I think that's about right. But however you want to discuss it, you can discuss them one at a time, or you can, that's the numbers I know, and that's how we got here. Just by raising your hand. Talk.
Use the mic, though.
And, yeah, talking. No, go ahead.
I just didn't know if you guys were going to make a decision today or not.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we're hoping to.
And how we could be involved in the decision.
You're involved.
Mr. Mayor, do we need a motion to do something before we get to that point, or no? Or we're
No,
just gonna
because,
have some
no,
discussion?
because we're not discussing an individual person.
I like it.
So how are we going to,
Generally, you can talk about any discussion we had here today, but not individuals.
are we going to be able to talk about individuals? Like when you guys go to vote, we can't say beforehand
You better just give us
what our preference is.
give us your opinion right now. That's,
Want to just go down the line?
have at it.
By name?
I'd say first candidate or second candidate.
So,
I would say.
so first candidate was Howard Fink, right? And second candidate is Vincent.
Vincent Pastou. Or, I don't know how you pronounce
Pestu, I think.
it. Pastou.
Second candidate.
I like the second candidate best just because he has a lot of budget experience, and us department heads have also noticed that there's some personnel policy revisions that need to be made, and I think he'd be the best candidate for those two things.
I agree, second candidate.
Agree, second candidate, and the main reason there is, again, the position that we need right now. As you stated, the torch needs to keep burning and it can't go out. I think the four of us plus the other, all the employees within the city, that's going to be the strongest point. That'd be where we leave it at.
Mr. Christensen.
I mean, money does play a role, but I think in this case, I think the smooth transition between an outgoing covering the time we need until we are able to hire a full-time is probably at the top of the heap for me. And I appreciate the department heads taking time to give some input on this and ask questions. They definitely make a difference, and I'm certainly in agreement with them.
Go down the list, or you want to switch up? Let's switch.
Yeah, I think we should go back and forth.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I was fairly split, but for completely different reasons. I'm totally appreciative of your opinion, and I like the candle line. I feel like candidate number one is ambitious, and I was starting to think that I would, this is an individual that we may be looking at again in 6 months or something, or if they apply for the job. But that's not the task at hand. The task at hand is keep the lights on, keep things moving without any interruption. And yeah, I like the second candidate for that.
I was kind of along same lines there, as the first candidate, had mentioned in his resume and cover letter that he was interested in continuing on, if the full-time position did open up. But after, talking, with the second candidate, he's got quite a breadth of experience, large communities, down to small communities. I think, I would support the second candidate as well.
I looked at the fact that not only do we need to transition in, but we also need to transition out when we hire a new city manager. So I think that it's important that we hire someone that will help on that end as well as we go through it. The second candidate certainly had the experience that especially with budgets larger than ours, and I think that's important as we do things. So I'm also in favor of the second candidate.
As the mayor spoke about being part of the committee to get to this point, the second candidate was at the top of my list, even when we were trying to find alternatives. So you had a decision to be made. But I'm not one of those that just kind of like wants to take that one and just run with it. So I thought that it was great that we were asking the questions before the public and also having the department heads involved with those decisions. As I said before, at previous meetings, it's very important that whatever opportunity they have to be able to choose a person that they have to work under, and I think this is great. I believe that it's pretty unanimous, and I would totally concur with the second candidate being my choice.
No comments.
I don't have any either, so somebody wants to make a motion?
Can I make a motion that we offer the interim position to Mr. Pastu pending the legalities that need to directly follow?
Background check and
Yep.
suitable contract signed.
Second.
Any more discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I'll let Mr. Hillard know. On to the next item of business is mayoral appointment to the Airport Advisory Board, Cam Robinson. Somehow it fell through the cracks. It was Mayor Lewis's appointment, but he never got finished up, and they need a person to make a quorum for next Monday's meeting. So,
Move to accept.
Second.
any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the item C has to be another, I'm sorry. You got both mayoral appointments on there, right? You got both mayoral appointments. One is just, and I want to explain, it's Anthony's going to be appointed to serve in the position of the mayor on the DDA. That's the appointment that Anthony's getting. It's on the sheet. There's two mayoral appointments. Newman, show us that sheet right there. This is the sheet. So Cam's going to airport, Anthony's going to Downtown Development Authority.
Just because it wasn't discussed at all, can we just do another additional vote on that,
Sure.
just to make sure
And
it's getting
That's fine.
clear?
And that's fair. I just missed it, but the reason we're doing that is because in the charter, it did require that either the city manager or mayor serve. But we found that we could appoint Anthony. I mean, you already have a person on the board. There's no sense of two council people going to the same board meeting. So this will give him voting power on the DDA, and he's not just a liaison. He will be a voting member of the DDA.
So I would amend my motion to
Oh, you
bring, or can't we?
Yeah, make a new one.
Make a new one. Okay, all right.
Make a new one to appoint Anthony.
Yes, so we make a new one to appoint Anthony Rodriguez as the DDA.
And supported.
Support.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so those are done. And then the next one has to do with our DPW director. And you've read all the package material on that. She's here and she can talk about that if you'd like to talk about it, or if you want to get it on the floor for discussion, somebody can make a motion to approve it and then we can discuss it.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second to authorized to apply for the Eagle Recycling Infrastructure Grant. And Mr. Christensen.
Just a couple of questions, because I knew we lost the county funding for recycling, and I don't remember what that was, but I don't think it was a number. Was it a number close to this, or was it much less? Okay, so this is a big step up. I know I've read what the improvements are. Is the goal to hopefully get more material in, which will generate more revenue at the end of the day, maybe add an employee or two? Or kind of what is the end game here that we hope happens?
Right now, I don't I'm not going to add any employees. That's not in the future of what I envision. Constructing this 40 by 60 barn with obviously the grant money will give us room for all of our materials that we do recycle. So right now, if you go down there, we have a lot of stuff that's stored outside. If we have the space to store more materials, then hopefully we can recycle more materials, which then will lead to us being able to have a higher sale of recyclable goods. Right now, we are at capacity and maybe even really over capacity, as you see some of the baled piles that are sitting outside that we have nowhere to store. When we go to get recyclable materials and we sell them to our distributors, they give us X amount of dollars, right? If we have a pile of paper sitting outside and it gets wet, we're not going to get as much money for that as we would if it was stored inside, things of that nature. So being able to have a storage facility would give us space to storage. We'd be able to house more materials. Therefore, hopefully we can then take in more material to sell out.
Revenue.
Yes.
Okay, so I know I'm gonna make some enemies here, but I may be one of the members of the camp that think that we need to just get rid of the recycling center. I know that at times we had discussions with Mr. Hillard about possible future decisions that might be made really along those lines. And so, we haven't really got an update on that, and I don't imagine we will be at this point. And so, do you actually expect that the building of this, let's talk about a sunk cost analysis here. Like, how long is it gonna take us to recuperate $44,000? Like, building this building, sure, we'll keep some materials inside and you can sell it at a higher price, but what's the real number there on recouping that?
I actually don't know, but if you will recall, the last budget that I had that I came in, so 24-25 budget, council actually approved $80,000 for them to build their own infrastructure, the city themselves. So you guys had already approved $80,000 that we never used. There are some things that are happening that maybe people don't know about. So Eaton County Resource Recovery has a mobile unit that goes around and recycles. So before, there used to be a recycling center in Eaton Rapids and some other local places around. Now, they have basically taken them over, Eaton County has, and now it's only a mobile recycling unit. So for people in the outskirts of town, such as myself, I live in Eaton Rapids Township, for me to go and recycle on X, Y, and Z day, I can't do that because I have to just catch the Eaton County Resource Recovery whenever they're gonna be out there. So I bring my recyclables in here to Kara from Eaton Rapids Township because I know when the hours are open and I can make those times work. So with that being said, with them getting rid of all the other infrastructures around and it's just this mobile unit, I would expect to see an uptick in recycling here because, like I said, you have to catch a mobile recycling unit or you're not recycling at all, or you just drive it into Kara.
Yes. So, I just want to make something very clear because it was brought up. So I'm not directing it at you, but in the general public. So when a budget is made, I approve a budget, but not because I love everything in it. Actually, for the longest time, wasn't going to approve the previous budget. There's all kinds of crap in there that I think, I don't really prefer, but that's not how a budget works. You don't get everything you want. And so that's clear. You vote on things. But also, a lot of these projects come back to us and we vote on them at a future, at a future time. And approving the budget was really because at the time, Mr. Fullerton here also proposed a motion that would have Mr. Hillard looking through everything and getting back to us with a report, which happened, but that doesn't give me an opportunity to change my stance on where I stand on the budget. That also shouldn't be confused with anyone in the public thinking that we don't have a good budget. We do have a good budget. Different people up here have different priorities, and what's in the budget is the priorities of the group that was up here at the time. So that's my only comments. Thanks.
Mr. Christensen.
What the county collects mobile, does that come to our recycling?
No.
Okay.
I will tell you this too, going through the grant application, Eagle will not give us a grant unless they agree that this is going to, in some turn, actually help out. Like, we have to prove that getting this 40 by 60 structure is actually going to make our recyclable material sales go up, or that we are actually going to get more people to come in and recycle now that we have more of capacity. So they don't just hand these things out, right? This is very detailed. I had to do a very detailed grant application. So with that being said, I think that if Eagle agrees that by us putting up this infrastructure, we'll do those things, I think is probably a pretty good lead to follow.
Just for council's information too, I allowed this to come on this agenda because Stephanie was not aware of the policy of the city that even if it's a grant, even if you're just applying for a grant, you have to get approval first before you apply for the grant. So we might not even get the grant anyway, but she had to get approval, and that grant is due this Thursday. So we ended up putting it on this agenda so that if you want to approve her to apply for it, you still could have the time to say no. But that is the council policy now, is even if you're, and that was in December of 2025, if I remember right, or 24? It's been recent that you, I mean, I remember with the air packs, we went through it and about lost the $200 and some thousand grant for those, but that's why it's here today at a special meeting. It's due on Thursday. If you miss Thursday, you're not going to get it at all for sure. So just so you got I think Stephanie spelled it out, but it was a little hard to follow that. That's why it's here today. Mr. Christensen or Mr. Newman, which one you had?
I do this every day for a living. I'm environmental health and safety. I do recycling at work. I pay Granger to take my recycling. I'll take stuff over to Kara. Kind of towards Anthony, the payback on 44,000, if we can increase the volume of just cardboard, all of the recycling reclamation centers enjoy truckloads or trailer loads, 53-foot loads of recycled material, cardboard being one of the highest revenue recyclables that are out there. When I worked at Spartan Motors, we recycled trailers of cardboard, and the entire facility, all 15 facilities, the revenue generated off of that paid for our Granger trash service every month, and still had leftover revenue, to do that. So to regain $44,000, I noticed on the one line item here, it's, if there's a requirement to train, to track the number of years, on return, and it's marked yes, but the box is blank. But, looking at the amount of stuff that they recycle at Kara, if they have a revenue stream for it, or just the right thing to do, and keeping it out of our landfills, and we're able to process it, and that sort of thing. I don't think $44,000 is going to take, very long to recuperate, just in the expansion of the tonnage that we would be able to, accumulate. Their office paper and all of the books and all of that kind of stuff, there's a dollar value there. And, the amount of wet material, you get paid by the ton, so if it's soaked in water, obviously going to weigh more. That's why they disregard a lot of that, and you don't get money for it because it's, contaminated. Outside of that, stormwater and all of the runoff and things that are going on, over there with the external storage. You see the white bags of plastics and styrofoam and all that stuff. You got trailers to put styrofoam in. So I think, overall, it's gonna improve the operations over there. And you may even be able to consolidate some of those buildings, to where you can get people in and have a little better organization down there, so.
Yeah, and I've been working with the recycling center manager, Quinn, on some outreach information of how we can send more outreach out into the community, and also some of the bigger businesses, how we can outreach to them of, hey, these are the things that you can come and recycle, and we'd love for you to recycle with us. So right now, we're trying to put some sort of program together where we can do a lot more outreach than what we're doing, which should also help more materials come in as well.
Mr. Chin.
Yep. From an environmental standpoint, I think it's important that we keep the center open as much as we can from that standpoint. And as you mentioned, Mayor, this is just an application for the grant. The other point, though, is that whether we like things in the budget or not, we approve the budget. And so any attempt to reduce costs that have been projected in the budget, certainly seeking grants to do that, we need to take the advantage of any of this outside funding as we can. So, I mean, we've already approved the money in a previous budget. This money that we have to put up is half of what we budgeted for, so it's going to, if we do get the grant, certainly we'll end up saving dollars that we have to spend to keep this open. Down the road, I was going to suggest that the real work here is not so much getting this grant and putting the building up, is to make sure that we communicate out to the community and surrounding communities that we allow to bring this stuff in and increase, seeing that we're increasing capacity, increasing customers that do go there. And I use it quite regularly for my cardboard. And it's a busy place, and I think it makes sense for us to approve for this grant. And certainly this evening I'll be with our senator and our representatives, so I'll start talking to them about getting this grant on board.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I have a fondness for that place down there, the recycling center. It was basically in its infancy when I started volunteering down there, and it was definitely far from as organized as it is now. At that time, everybody who worked there was a volunteer, I do believe, even including the person who directed it. I could be mistaken on that, but either way, the better half or a better portion of the people were volunteers there. Since then, we actually have people who are committed because they're employed. They're getting a small check or whatever, and things are so much more organized than they used to be. The convenient factor of avoiding that stuff from going to landfill. Sometimes the things that are taken there may not be recyclable, but it doesn't take long for the public to realize that, that's the reason it is because we don't have a quantity. If we had enough of the material, then we would be able to recycle it there. So therefore, people are probably more apt to put it into the trash. Giving an opportunity to have more capacity and keeping it dry and collected in a organized fashion also generates larger revenue. And I think, really truthfully, we're playing for the long game here. Build that pole barn in 10 years and see if it costs any less. Try to keep that trash, or what would be viewed as trash because it's recyclable material, but yet it's contained in these bags and such. If they become with a hole and then ends up scattered all over, that doesn't do anything positive for us. So having them contained like we do still doesn't keep them from scattering. And so I really think that it's one of those things that we're investing in the success of the city long-term. And if you were to go back and look at what that place was before it became the recycling center, it's just one of those things that we need to keep moving in the right direction. And I think we're getting a whole lot of money potentially through this grant that offsets the cost of what we would have to spend on that building in that area in years to come. So it kind of seems like it's worthy of at least filling on the application and taking a chance that we get that money.
And one more thing to note, it's not just a 40 by 60 pole barn. It also comes with perimeter fencing too. So we have an issue with people stealing out of our scrap metal bin, which also takes out of our profits. So if we can get this perimeter fencing in, hopefully we will have less people stealing out of our scrap metal bin and turning it in for money. And that'll be more money that we will keep back in our own pockets.
Who made the motion?
Christian.
Okay. Do you have something more?
If this all happened and we were able to build this new barn, would the loading of outbound continue as it is, or would this greatly improve that so we're a lot more streamlined getting loaded and get this stuff out?
It would be a lot more streamlined. It would also help too, because within the grant as well, I'm asking for new paving and some concrete aprons and stuff. It would also just help for the flow of traffic through Kara, because right now it's not very good and the pavement conditions are very poor. So we would be able to house more people at one time that are recycling, and then also when we have the big semis coming in there, loading, that type of thing, it will make it a lot easier. We're loading it all out of one building.
Okay, then we will proceed to vote. All those in favor of applying for the grant, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Does the staff want to talk anymore? All right, how about the mayor and the council members? No?
I will be missing our next meeting. I will be in Minnesota for a few days, leaving tomorrow night. So if for some crazy reason I'm needed, you know how to get a hold of me.
No?
No, I'm good.
No comment.
Yeah, quickly, the CATA board elected a new chair, and our current chair stepped down. She's still part of the executive board, but her time commitment. The prior chair of the board was Mary Clark, who's the clerk for Delta Township, so she's going to be busy coming up. So our new one is the city manager from Eaton Rapids, who will be doing that. We did it in the housing committee. Selena and I did a presentation on housing to the Michigan Country organization. We had about 20 people there, and they had some really good questions, and we had good conversation. I just received this today in the mail, but I received a certificate from the Michigan Infrastructure Council for successfully completing 25 professional development hours and all the requirements for the Asset Management Champions program. So it's a program that emphasizes a focus on making sure that we're doing asset management and capital improvement plans. As we heard from some of the candidates, the importance of having those certainly helps us in the budget process. I've been asking for a capital improvements or asset management plan since June of '22, and hopefully I'll keep bugging on this, that we need to have a 5-year, at least a 5-year plan for capital improvements for us to be able to, as a council, look not only the needs today of all of our assets, but down the road as well. So that's kind of important from that standpoint. That's it. Thanks.
All right, I'll be quick. Just because a few comments are sort of directed at me, I'm going to go ahead and take a moment to answer them. I know we're all trying to get along up here, so hopefully people won't be upset. But just a couple things. One, I just want to remind people that this council has approved budgets before and voted against things when they ultimately come to our desk. That's not uncommon. I think everyone up here has done that. Council can change their minds after they approve a budget. Absolutely, 100%. We have new members that weren't on our council before who might have different opinions about how money should be spent. And they have a right to vote however they want. So I just think that's important to point out. Also that my question was really about sustainability. Obviously, some people think that the recycling is a city service. And so, it's not something that necessarily has to make money. And by the way, I love the recycling center. They're probably going to be getting a ton of cardboard by me. I'm sure I probably get more cardboard than anyone with all this karate gear being shipped to my karate school every weekend. So I absolutely love the recycling center. And that's all my comments. Thanks.
All I'll say is the first candidate, one of his best comments was at the very end, if you all heard that really loud and clear, that if we stay up high in policy and don't get down in, that was pretty impressive.
Well, plus our charter requires that.
Right, we just have to stay that way
Yeah.
if we can.
Exactly.
We thank the department heads for showing up. Input was good. That will need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourned.